What is going on, you guys? And welcome back to your channel. We are back home from Major 3 in Toronto, and everybody knows what that means. It's tier list time. Now, the event, to be completely honest with you guys, was relatively underwhelming up until about Sunday, to be honest with you. I think there were a few series during the weekend that were entertaining, but it was really, there was a lot to be desired going into a Sunday at a tournament. And let me tell you guys something. The Sunday at this event was probably the best that I've ever seen in the CDL. We had multiple game fives. The grand final was a little bit of a letdown, as you guys saw, with the 4-0 sweep that Optic had over the Toronto Ultra. But the games were just unbelievable. If you guys did not get a chance to watch them, I implore you to go back and take a look. But today, we are obviously going to be going through the tier list. I'm going to give you guys my opinions post Major 3, what to look for going forward into the Major 4 qualifiers. We are now in champ season. This is the last chance for a lot of these teams to get points. And we're just going to go through and I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown. So obviously starting with our event winners, I mean, that's just where they go. Myself included, I don't think anybody had them winning this tournament. They were playing very sloppy online Call of Duty prior to this. Now, I don't think that there was ever a point that I was worried about them losing series that weren't against FaZe. They have been insanely consistent throughout the entire season in series, again, not against FaZe. I think the last time they lost was in like January or February, something insane like that. But I don't think anyone had them really winning the tournament based on their online matches. It was very sloppy. There was a lot to be desired in terms of execution and just how they were playing the game. A lot of the series required them to clutch. Again, I never thought they would actually lose the series, which is a positive in the online stages. But I don't think that they had shown me or the fans or anything like that enough promise or enough dominance in their series to really garner an event-winning opinion. Even up until Sunday, they kind of flipped a switch. I believe Saturday night, Ken and AG both went on Twitter, and I think in their post game, they were vocally upset with the way that they were playing COD because it was similar to how they were doing it online, and they knew that they could execute better. And obviously, they showed up Sunday, flipped an unbelievable switch, and just had like a blackout day of Call of Duty. I mean, they executed in every game mode. They looked absolutely fantastic. The control was like a little shaky, but they won it in finals when it mattered. But I mean, they just flipped an unbelievable switch on Sunday, and I can't give them more props. Obviously, congrats to Shotzi for the MVP, a unbelievable superstar performance. And I mean, again, I did not have them winning this event. They were arguably, even though top 4, a dark horse team. And they also conquered their FaZe demons, getting their first victory over FaZe this season in the losers finals. So congratulations to Optic. They played a fucking unbelievable tournament. They all clicked when it mattered. Ken was keeping them together in all of the listen-ins that you guys heard. Shotzi, again, MVP performance, continuing his online dominance to LAN, which is something that we were looking for. AG kicked up a gear. He was relatively underwhelming in terms of expectation, I think, for the weekend. And he just kind of got back to that Vanguard MW2 style pred where he was just running people over, which was something that we were looking for. And then Brandon, who I think has come into his own and is probably the best version of himself in terms of just a complete player that he's ever been. So I can't say enough good things about this Optic team. I hope that they keep the momentum going forward because it's much more fun having multiple teams that are good and can win events than just 2. So congratulations to them once again. Next, we're going to put FaZe in the same tier. I think that they had a poor weekend, but I don't think that a poor weekend or a poor game mode can really bump them down a tier because they've been dominant all season. This is their worst placing, and it's 3rd. Their search and destroy was their Achilles heel. I believe they've lost 8 of their last 9, 5 of them being on LAN. That was definitely the reasoning for their underperformance this weekend. I don't think that this will continue. I have kind of compared them to Cold War before. I've made that opinion vocal. I believe that this team is that good, but they just did not show up this weekend in Search and Destroy. And as you guys all know, S&D wins championships. So they have some major homework to do in maps 2 and 5. I think Zach had an unbelievable tournament. The fact that he could join this team and stand out and be their best performing player, joining this trio is something that is just honestly very impressive to me. Draws was their best player this weekend. I don't think it was particularly close. Celium had one of his poor performances, which are very, 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 very few and far between. Both of them being against Optic, though, which is a little notable. I think that Dashy matchup is a little bit of a problem. But he had an underperforming series in their losers final. And they just seemed a little bit off this weekend, I think. They had an unbelievable stage. They were like running through teams. They beat all of the top 4 in a 9-2 map count total. I had them as my event winner. I think everyone under the sun with a brain that watches COD had FaZe winning this event, or at least appearing in the grand final, which they did not. So I think that I don't think that they had such a poor performance for them to bump into A. I think that they still are an S tier team. I think they're still going to be in grand finals or contending for grand finals for the rest of the season. Again, they did get third here, but I don't think that is a reason to bump them down. I think that this team is unbelievable. They just had a poor search and destroy weekend. Next is going to be Ultra. I'm also going to put Ultra in S tier. If you guys notice, these are all three of our current event winners. Ultra is a little bit different because I think that you could make an argument for putting them in A tier strictly because I don't think that the consistency that the other teams, being FaZe and Optic, all four players have, Toronto does not. Insight has been a major problem. I think that he overperformed severely in Major 1. I think that was like the best version of Insight that I think I've ever seen. He's definitely had his moments in like Cold War's rookie season, and he's had flashes, but that Major 1 was like unbelievable COD. He was clutching everything in search and destroy. He was a walking 1.2 in respawn. And since then, he's really had a major fall off in respawn specifically. We saw a 3-17 control map this weekend out of him. And I don't think that he is consistent enough. Again, I'm going to put them in S tier because they did have a good weekend. They did have a good online stage. They are a phenomenal team. I'm going to leave them in S. But they have glaring weaknesses when it comes to just individual performance. The way that they stack up against FaZe and Optic in terms of consistency and slaying is not on par. If Scrap is having an off series, which we did see, the chances of this team winning go down exponentially. And I think that New York also has that problem when it comes to Hydra. But now staying on Toronto, I think Envoy also had a bigger hardpoint problem online. Not so much search and destroy or control. He was pretty consistent in those game modes, but we were harping on his hardpoint a lot. He had a stretch of just like really, really poor performances from Major 2 all the way through the qualifiers. And then for the last, like, I'd say 5 matches or so, including the LAN, he's been like very, very good for them. He's been a very good piece. He picked it back up. He's where he should be in that game mode. And I think that Scrap and Toby are obviously going to do their thing at all times. Scraps is like probably MVP front runner at this point, or definitely at least top 2. So I think that just the way that their consistent players match up against FaZe and Optic, there is an argument to put them in A. They are a 2-time grand finalist. I have faith in this team to put it together. I'm going to leave them in S, but I understand if you guys disagree. It's just hard for me to put them in the same tier as New York. And I don't want to throw another tier in here because you guys get mad at me when I make new tiers and add things to the list. But I just can't in good faith put Ultra and New York in the same tier because I don't think that they are particularly close, even if the matches or if they play, even if those series are. I think just the total body of work for this season, I just can't put them in the same tier. They also didn't win a map. Scrap, are we fucking serious again? Anyway, next we're going to do New York. I'm going to put them in A. I think this team has a plethora of problems. I don't really think there's an argument here. They're better than the rest, but not better than FaZe, Optic, or Toronto. They're better than everyone else, though. It's a weird spot to be in. I don't think that they are, I don't want to say upsettable, because that doesn't sound like a word, but I don't think that they are threatened by any of the teams that aren't in the top 3. This team has a glaring hardpoint problem. They also have consistency problems when it comes to Kismet. I think he's been pretty underwhelming this year just as a whole. I don't think he's as good at this title as he was last year. That's number 1. Number 2 was Sib coming into this tournament. I've been very hard on the roster change. I still don't know if I agree with it. Probably not. But I've been hard on Dante because we have been waiting for him to show up and perform how he did in Vanguard or MW2. Have those flashes, those takeover maps, those 1.3s that we saw prior and we're looking for when this roster change was made. We really haven't seen up until this point, and this major was phenomenal from Sib. He played a great tournament through and through. Obviously their result was not what they wanted. I think this was the first point since honestly like stage 1 qualifiers where Dante was like a 1.2, 1.3 online. This was the first point in the season where I was like, okay, that's what we were looking for when this change was made. So it was great to see him come to form. Caesar had a little bit of, or Skies had a little bit of an underwhelming tournament. Again, I touched on Kiz, and then Hydra is like fucking God. This guy, dude, Hydra is unbelievable. There was a Vista hardpoint against Optic that he started 8-16. I think it was against Optic. There was a Vista Hardpoint this year, or this major, where he started off really poorly. It was double negative, and New York was just getting absolutely body slammed. And then Paco eventually turned around. I believe he ended the map like 32-30, but you could just tell the ebb and flow of their game relies so heavily on Hydra to do well. And if he is not performing to the standard that he has somehow set in the CDL, they will lose. This team is completely contingent on whether he's playing well or not, which is a major problem for consistency. It is a major problem for upsets. It is a major problem for just, in general, a roster depending on one person. So I think New York is definitely fourth here. They're in a weird spot. Like I said, they're better than the rest, but not better than FaZe, Optic, or Ultra. So they need to put it together in Hardpoint. They are a great control team. I think that is the thing that I was the most impressed with by them this weekend. They are unbelievable at control. So being good at a game mode, or a swing mode, excuse me, is always going to be good back pocket. They're good at search. They just have to figure out Hardpoint. Their map pool sucks. Alrighty, moving on to the B tier. I'm just going to go ahead. I've spent like fucking 20 minutes already, so I'm just going to kind of, not speed run, but we're going to go through all of these as quick as I can. We're going to do Seattle. We're going to do Miami, and we're going to do the Royal Ravens. Now, Seattle and Miami both had phenomenal weekends. I don't think people really pegged them top 6. Maybe Seattle, just from the whispers of how they were doing in scrims and things like that, and just the momentum that they had online. I think Seattle here wasn't a super crazy surprise. Miami absolutely was. They had not won a map on land prior to this tournament, and they pull out a top 6. Fucking crazy weekend from them. And then Carolina, who I was a huge fan of prior to them getting knocked out, because I bought into them, and then they lost the next tournament, or they lost the next series. But I think Carolina, at this point, we've seen them on land at 3 different majors. I've seen Tyler Fellow. I've seen Clayster. The way that these guys play on land compared to online, it's not even fucking comparable. It's actually kind of laughable now that I think about it. I think these guys just have, whether it be a mental issue, whether it be just online, the matchups, the pings, whatever external factors go into it. When this team shows up to land, they are unequivocally better, period. Point blank, absolutely. And I think that they are a B tier team. I think that they belong in the upper tier of teams amongst the bottom 8. I love the way that these guys play. I am a big fan of Gwyn. Obviously, my rookie of the year pick to start the year. Kid was great. Fellow really stepped up to the plate this weekend. Clay was playing great. Tej has been an absolute rock for these guys. I can't throw enough gas Tej's way. Tej is probably like one of the most underrated players in the league at this point. Since he's joined the team, he's been very good at search and destroy. He very rarely throws like 0.7s, 0.6s, anything like crazy. He's always between that like 0.85 to like 1.1 range, doing his job. And I think people really need to start throwing a little bit more respect on Fat Bob's name. But I'm a big fan of this team. I think they're well-rounded. They just got to play on land, because God would help them online. For the Miami side, I'm going to admit that I was wrong about this team. I thought that the one-person change when they picked up Real really wasn't going to move the needle that much, but I didn't understand how good Real actually was at the time. He's unbelievable. This kid is, if he had played from the beginning of the season, he could have been a Rookie of the Year contender, or he could still be with the way that Miami play at Major 4 and Champs if they get there, which this performance definitely helps with. Real's unbelievable. The kid is just consistent through and through. He plays a role which could garner some stinkers every now and then, which he has had, but his highs are very, very high. So he stepped up to the plate this weekend. I think Miami had a really good search and destroy weekend, which is big, because if you have a consistent S&D with the extended series among the bottom 8 teams, when you can rely on games 2 and 5 pretty heavily, because when you're playing in the bottom 8, most of the time the skill gap in the series is pretty close, so you tend to have extended series. So when you have that backbone of search and destroy to fall back on. Miami had 6-star and high-rise back pocket this weekend. Both of the maps for them are pretty much unbelievable. 6-star, they destroyed FaZe in it. They just looked very comfortable on the map. So that's going to be a problem moving forward for a lot of teams. And Miami just looked good. They showed up this weekend. They played their game, and they impressed me. And then Seattle, they put a Booza on an AR, and the kid is a walking 1.2. this is, I don't understand the mindset to bring these people into the league, these players that have such good stock. Think of Fame last year when he had to run an AR after their roster change. I don't understand the mindset of bringing a player like Abuza, who was probably the top AR prospect in challengers, and making him run a sub in a broken system. And now for the last couple of matches, they've put an AR in his hands, and the guy is genuinely unbelievable. So that was point number one. Shout out to Abuza, man. That kid's gross. Number two is 0-4. This guy has completely transformed the way that Seattle play the game. He is unbelievable in S&D. He is an S&D kid at heart. And he is absolutely showing that in the league right now. He's phenomenal at search and destroy. But the pace that he plays at really complements Kyler, or Hook, which is something that I wasn't aware of in terms of just his respawn prowess. I really was it's a me, but I was unfamiliar with his game. Him and Kyler really bounce well off of each other on the map. And the thing that Seattle does is it's kind of keen to Optic last year, if you guys remember, when Shotzi and Hook had that moment around like a little over halfway through the season when they just became the best team in the game. Essentially, they were just destroying everyone through controlled chaos and just running around the map, making it seem like it was chaotic or the map was just random, but it was actually them controlling that and understanding like what they were doing on the map and just making it feel chaotic for other teams. That's how Seattle plays, obviously to not, the extent that Optic was doing it, but that's the same play style that the Seattle team has. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Kyler was on both of those teams. But that's the way that Seattle plays. And you saw it this weekend when they ran into more structure like Toronto, they kind of got put down pretty badly. But when you can play down to teams in the bottom 8 with that style, and if you can make the game as chaotic as possible, but you're comfortable in situations like that, I think that it creates a dynamic in which teams don't know how to prepare for and teams don't know how to adapt on the fly. Which is why I think Seattle got a top 6 this weekend. They're great at search and destroy. They make the game pretty random, but again, they know what they're doing for the most part when it comes to them. So the bottom 8 teams just really don't know how to adjust the way that, say, Toronto did, or just a team with a little bit more structure. So I think Seattle's taking advantage of the playstyle, which is great on them. They look great this weekend, top 6. Now we get to the stinkers. We're going in the C tier. We are going to have LAT and Vegas. There are some rumors prior to this video coming out of LAT making changes. Obviously, you guys are going to think that I know anything about it. I promise you, I do not. I don't know what's going on. I just think that, they got their first series win. They showed some promise online. Granted, the schedule was a little cookie cutter cupcakey, but they took care of business. I think they showed up. They had a relatively good tournament. Dan Ghosty is still him, for sure. And yeah, I think Joe has been good since he came into the team. Nasty is still doing his thing as well. He's always throwing damage. He's always around a 1, and he's always in the right spot. The KD might not, be flashy 1.2s, but I feel like Byron is just a good rock for the team. The issue I think I had this weekend was with Kremp. He seems to get the sprints or just like put himself in situations where he doesn't really know how to adapt well or how to get himself out of the blender that you can get put in this game. He had a sub base where I believe he went like 5-20 or something insane like that. He had a pretty poor performance. It was the last map of the tournament that they actually played. So I think that, again, LAT isn't a D tier team. I would take them over Boston, LAG, and Rocker. But I don't think that right now I've seen enough from them to really garner a higher opinion. I hope that they can qualify for champs and put it together moving forward. Again, they got their first series win on LAN this season, so that's cool. But definitely need to see more from them going forward for sure. They did show some good grit this weekend, though. They had a couple of really close maps, which were a problem in the past. They kind of crumbled in the final moments before, leading up to this major. That was just a problem that they had. They have great game 5 ice, which is another thing, again, and I mentioned earlier with the extended series in the bottom 8 matchups, when you have a reliable game 5, I believe they're 7-2 this year in game 5s. It's definitely helped out for sure, because that's 7 series wins. And then in the same tier, I'm going to put the Vegas Legion. They did get last. They got a top 12 finish here, but they did not really have a lot of practice with Johnny. I believe they only had like a week or so of scrims with 1 match, or maybe 2 matches. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was a short amount of practice time. I think Johnny fits this team a lot better than Asim did. They seem to return to form a little bit to the way that they were playing with Purge prior to the change. I think Johnny's game is great. He has a go button, which I love to see. And I don't know, maybe I'm biased. I just really like this Vegas team. I think that they have a great core three with Attach, Geo, and Nero. While I do think Attach has definitely taken a step back from the way that he played Majors 1 and 2. I had him as like an S tier player. He was unbelievable. He had like a small drop off with the roster change for ASIM, and I don't think he's really returned to that level fully. Geo has started to come back in hardpoint. He had those crazy pop off like 42 and 22 maps. So he's been great in the respawns. And Nero, I think, has probably been the most impressive player for this team for just the entirety of the year. Nero's been insanely consistent for them in a game where his playstyle isn't really garnered to very well. And I think that, again, being on the back foot with the way that he plays the game and still performing to the level that he has is super impressive. So I think I have faith in this team going forward. They get some scrims under their belt. They do unfortunately have a pretty tough online schedule. I believe they play 3 of the top 4 teams right away, which is a little bit of a gauntlet, especially when you're in the champs qualification. I believe they're in 11th right now, so they have some work to do. But I have faith in these guys. I think they could put it together with some scrims and some matches and maybe cause some upsets here and there. And then again in D tier, Lord have mercy. Boston, I mean, do we need any explanation there? These guys are horrific. LAG, they can't, like, I don't even know where to begin. They got last at like 5 of the last 6 majors they've played. They can't win Search and Destroy. They're like 0-9 in game 5. I mean, these guys need to do something and do it fast. I don't know if they're going to make roster changes because at this point they will not qualify for champs barring an event win. So they're pretty much out of it. I don't know what their mentality is going forward for Major 4 because that basically is the last tournament of the year for them. I don't know what steps that they want to take, but yeah. Boston stink. Next up is LAG. I was high on them when they made their roster change with Flames. It looked maybe like a little bit of a honeymoon, I suppose, but I just haven't seen enough from this team. I think Diamond Khan has regressed very, very badly from the way that he was playing earlier in the year. He was touted as like a top 10, top 15 player in this game. Haven't really seen him play like that since. Fame is a 0.6 or 1.2. Most of the time it's on the 0.6 end of things. He just has a like crazy consistency issue. Flames, I don't really want to criticize too heavily. He is the new guy to the team and he hasn't really shown me anything insane. Just with how he plays, it's kind of hard for me to critique him coming into a team like LAG. He has had some pop-off maps and he has done some things to show promise, but it's very hard to judge a rookie in a situation like this. So I kind of want to reserve opinions for him until maybe just like the end of this stage, I believe. Because I do think he's good. I think he's good at search. I think he brings a lot to the team. But again, when you're a rookie getting tossed into kind of a broken system, it's very hard to judge how good or bad of a player you truly are. And then Estriel, who I'm actually very high on. I think Estriel is gross. Estriel's been their best player for the entire season. He's super consistent. He had an okay major. They got last, but I think that he's had a great qualifier. He had, an okay major, barring one series. But he's definitely been the rock for this team for a while now at this point. So I don't think that these guys can make changes. I don't know like the politics behind the situation at their team, but they're probably fucked. And then last but not least is Rocker. I hate this fucking team construction. I love the players on the team. They're all great people. I hate the way this team is put together. If you guys watch the flank, you've heard us harp on it time and time again. You just have 2 of the same AR and 2 of the same sub, and you need some sort of diversity when it comes to play style and roles. Eli or Standy has been their best player. It really hasn't been close, truth be told. Lamar and Linz they really haven't shown me much since stage 1. Linz was basically a rookie of the year candidate after his stage 1 performance, and since then he has fallen off of a cliff. He was like 1A, 1B with Gwyn, and really since then there's been a lot to be desired from him. Lamar had like a crazy renaissance stage 1. He was disgusting and walking 1.2. Haven't seen that one in a while. Pierce has been serviceable, I think, since he joined the team. Gunless. He's throwing up damage. He's moving, but again, the way that this team is put together, I really can't expect much. I think that just the way that this roster works together, the way the players work together, I think they've won like 2 hard points as a team. They're very, very poor in respawn. They should have been 3-0'd at the major, but Standy dropped the S&D kill record at 17 to keep them alive in a 6-5 game 2. So I'm pretty low on this Rocker team. I don't know if they're going to make changes or not. I hope that they do, because just watching this team play, you can tell that just the things that they want to do on the map, it's all the same. They have no variety. Just because, again, they're all the same player. So I don't know what they're going to do. They need to figure the fuck out, though. And that is pretty much everything, guys. Obviously, the bottom 8 teams are far less interesting than the top side. But if you guys disagree with anything, feel free to let me know. Again, you could argue to put Ultra in B tier, but or A tier, I guess. But I just think Ultra is a better team than New York, and having them in the same tier just does not work for me. But that's probably the main thing that I think people might disagree with. But again, I just can't have Ultra and New York in the same tier. It's just unfair. So appreciate you guys for watching. It's a little bit of a long-winded video, but that's just my thoughts on everything going into the Major 4 qualifiers. So I appreciate you guys for watching. Have a good rest of your day.